Hello, everyone. I'm Peter Boland, and I'm here with,
Maggie Whitehouse.
and we are two mystics walking to a bar. That's what we're calling ourselves these days. And we are very interested in world spirituality and the wisdom traditions of the world and the hidden things behind the visible things. And we'd love to get on with y'all here for about 30 minutes once a month or so and kind of sort through whatever's moving through all of our lives. I don't know if you know Maggie Whitehouse real well. Did you know that she has other podcasts that you can go look up and listen to? And she has scads of best-selling books, fiction and nonfiction. She has a delightful Substack. If you aren't reading that, you're missing out. And so I just wanted to take a moment there, Maggie, and embarrass you
Oh,
and kind of
thank
list your
you.
resume a bit if I could. Your output is inspiring, and I'm honored to call you friend.
Oh,
So I got a text the other day from Maggie, and I wanted to share it with you. Not the it was a clip of something about Hafiz, the 14th century Muslim mystic poet, the Sufi poet. Uh, Iran, in other words, and isn't
mm,
Iran on all of our minds a little bit more these days? And the bit that you sent me, Maggie,
mm.
was a little bit about a poem of Hafiz where he makes a distinction between a soldier and a warrior.
Yeah.
And he said you can become a horseman carrying your heart through this world like a life-giving sun, but only if you and God become sweet lovers. So he's suggesting, I guess, to most of us, the word soldier and warrior are synonyms,
Yeah.
but he's making this metaphorical leap because that's what poets do. Soldiers are in the business of killing and defending and all of that stuff. But warriors, he wants to kind of lift that over here and say, really, to be a warrior is to move through the world with so much love and connection with God in your heart that you transform everything around you just by your presence. What led you to fall in love with this passage and share it with me? You are muted somehow.
No.
I didn't do it. Come
Well,
back.
I had an answer, and of course now I can't remember it because I've unmuted myself.
Good.
What maybe? Well, I'm working on courses about the Dark Mother at the moment, which is
Mm,
the origin. It's not the opposite of the masculine, it's the origin, it's the nothingness. And one of the things in it is the story of Zipporah, the wife of Moses. When Moses heading back towards Egypt to do his thing and tells Pharaoh, "We want out." And of course, he's nervous about it. He doesn't really want to go, but God sent him. And on the way, God tries to kill him. And that's one of these things in the Bible which nobody ever seems to be able to explain. Why on
I
earth
don't
is
recall
God?
that bit. And I was just reading Exodus the other day. What happened?
Well, what happens is that Moses gets a wallop from God, and Zipporah says to him, "This is because you have not circumcised your son."
Yes, yes.
Now, don't go straight into the, oh, Jewish folk circumcise, whatever. In those
Right.
days, circumcision was not done to a newborn baby at 8 days old. It might have been, it probably was by the time of Jesus, but the point of circumcision, and this is Richard Raw's workshops for men. One of my co-podcast hosts, Mark Townsend, has been on one of those. They're extraordinary out in the desert. And he said that the purpose of circumcision was for a man on the point of puberty to stop him becoming arrogant, to teach him humility, to actually ritually humiliate him at the point
Gosh.
where he's about to start waving things around and going for the girls or the other men, of course, whatever's going on in your psyche. But the point behind that is that Zipporah knew it's nothing to do, well, of course, it's everything to do with God in the Bible, but
Right.
the allegory of it is Zipporah knew that if Moses was not willing to show his own son the importance of humility, he could never be a good leader.
Yeah.
Now that's
Wow. I'd never
now,
heard that take.
no, it's very much a Richard Raw kind of take. But
Yeah.
it's one of these things that I mean, you and I have both been through difficult times in our lives, which we'd have liked to have been without, but which made us who we are, and they taught us humility. And the spiritual warrior is the somebody who literally does work from the heart, not from the ego and not from the orders, but actually sort of saying, what do I need to defend, to break, to stand up for, to march for? What do I need to fight for justice?
Yeah. So the warrior is the one through the circumcision ritual metaphor or some other
Mm,
suffering,
mm,
chosen or not chosen.
yeah,
Something is scraped away, something is removed, some of the architecture of your security and safety is turned to rubble.
yeah,
And you find yourself standing there in the open and there's nothing to do but be humble. And from that openness the portal to universal compassion comes out. The passage
yeah,
ends this way that the warrior, unlike the soldier, is a lover. The warrior is so much in touch with his or her heart that he or she can give it to the world. The warrior loves not only his nearest kin and mate, but also the world and God. The warrior relates to God as a lover. So this suffering in your workshops on darkness, so suffering is the I think of a I think of a
we don't
Bugs
like
Bunny.
it.
I think of a Bugs Bunny Roadrunner cartoon, if that isn't too oddly specific, where Elmer Fudd or somebody is hiding in a house and all of a sudden all four walls just fall down.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there on a chair in the middle of the desert. It's like
Yeah.
there's an upside to that apparently.
Well, there is, but the whole Exodus story in the Bible is, if you read it on the metaphorical level, Moses is he's a prince. He's a prince of Egypt, and before he's actually psychologically ready, he goes to try and defend his people because he's got this split identity. He knows he's also
Yeah,
a Hebrew,
yeah.
and he kills this guy, and then he has to go out into the desert because of the retribution. So that's his circumcision, if you like, mental and
Mm.
emotional. And then he has to come back. And then when he's picked up all his people, the metaphor in that would be you've had your spiritual awakening. You've got the first miracle. And that happens so often when you've had a spiritual awakening. You get this kind of blessing. And then you've got to pick up all your little personality traits and take them out into the desert and heal them.
Yeah.
And they all say, oh, it was better in Egypt.
So your share with me in this text and our discussion today here is kind of reminding me of the way Mahatma Gandhi
Mm,
interprets his the most important wisdom scripture of his tradition, the Indian Hindu tradition, that is the Bhagavad Gita, written around the time of Christ, and just a quick sketch of that for folks who might not
please
know
do.
this book. The Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between two characters, Arjuna and Krishna.
Mm,
And the setting is the cusp of a battle. There are two armies facing each other, but the battle hasn't started yet. And our protagonist, our hero, Arjuna, is the general and leader of one of the armies. And he tells his chariot driver, his boyhood friend Krishna, to pull the chariot out in the middle of the battlefield, which
mm,
itself is a nice spatial metaphor.
yeah.
And then he just in chapter one, he pours his guts out to his chariot driver, who's below him in rank, and says to Krishna, I don't think killing is right. This is war is evil, killing is evil. Isn't murder a sin? And he has in modern clinical terms, a panic attack. His mouth goes dry, he starts to shake, he drops his bow and arrow, he literally crumbles to the ground, and he says to his friend, I'm not going to do it.
Mm,
And Krishna spends the next 18 chapters talking Arjuna into doing it. He says, you're not wrong to feel this compassion, but you must fight, and here's why.
mm,
And so it sounds like on the very crude surface, like a pro-violence,
yeah.
pro-war book. So why would Gandhi, the great champion of nonviolence, fall in love with this book? Gandhi wrote two books in his life, his autobiography and a commentary on the Gita. He carried chapter two of the Gita in his back pocket with Matthew 5, 6, 7, and the Sermon on the Mount. And he read them both every morning, he tells us in his autobiography. This was a cornerstone text for him, along with Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And for him, they both meshed in this way that what the Gita is really about, is not yay war, let's go kill the bad guy, but it's really about the battlefield is a metaphor of the field of action.
Mm,
Just as for Hafiz, the warrior is a metaphorical shift of consciousness that enables you to open up in humility and love. And in the Gita, then Gandhi says, what we really learn, because each of us is the Arjuna of our own lives, we find ourselves, don't we, when we're born here in the field of action, and it's kind of a battle,
mm,
like when you're applying for a job and they get 100 applications, you want to win, or when you're sparring for love partners, or to literally get food, you have to go get it and
mm,
take it from living things. And there is a sort of inherent violence in existence
mm,
itself that is unavoidable. So in terms of karma, or which is just the Sanskrit word for action, we cannot not act. Non-action is not an option.
mm.
The only option, unless you want to just fall over dead, the only choice we have is what kind of action are you
Yeah.
going to take?
And from what
And
route?
and
Yes.
from what root? And
Mm,
so, like what you just shared about the Moses story in the Gita, you get this message that we must act, we must do our dharma, our service, our duty, we must fulfill our roles, but never from a place of egoic attachment.
mm,
And we must act without attachment to the fruits of action, to just act always in service, whether you're a school teacher, a police officer, butcher, candlestick maker, whatever you're doing,
mm,
to do it as a way of participating in the interconnectedness of life. And when killing must be done, it must be done humbly,
yeah.
with dignity, with compassion, which sounds strange, but with restraint,
Yeah.
with sober and somber discernment, not in like, yay, let's go kill those guys. So it's a completely different picture of action. It reminds me of what this Hafiz piece
Mm,
also mentions. Can acts of war be mindful and compassionate? It's a
yeah.
fascinating
That,
question.
thank you. That's a wonderful explanation. I love it. And it depends what you mean by war as well, doesn't it? Because we live 2 miles away from an abattoir, a
Yeah.
slaughterhouse.
And put that in American English. Yeah, slaughterhouse. Got it.
Slaughterhouse.
It's so much
So,
nicer in French, isn't it?
so nearly every time when I drive down to the village or to the local town or anywhere to get to the motorway or something to travel, I pass the slaughterhouse.
Mhm.
And there's nearly always a truck turning in full of cattle. And one
Yeah.
of my dear friends, a fellow minister, is a vegan. And every
Hmm.
time she goes past that, she weeps.
Hmm.
And I said to her, and I'm sorry, this is going to sound a bit like virtue signaling, but it's not. It's actually, how do you become a warrior of the heart, a spiritual warrior? I said to her,
Right.
but you must bless it.
What does that mean to bless it?
Every time I drive past that abattoir, and this is for the last 3.5 years, I go, may the angel of this abattoir be an angel of compassion. May there be
Mhm.
no scent of blood. May there be no fear. May all the workers take care of the animals. May the animals know that they are blessed. I cannot stop this,
That's beautiful.
but I ask for blessing. And every time I strengthen that angel of the abattoir. And one of my dear friends who's an holistic vet is or has to go to the abattoir quite often with creatures that can't be saved. And she
Right.
said that is one of the loveliest abattoirs she's ever been to. They're very
Oh,
careful to segregate the animals. It used to be horrible there. I'm not saying
right.
I changed it, but now the abattoir, they segregate the animals. Each one goes through individually. There's no smell of
Oh,
death. There's no smell of blood. The animals are looked after beforehand. They are cared
yes.
for, and the people, they're not just people who have jobs because they can't get a job anywhere else, which happens in a
Mm.
lot of slaughterhouses.
Yes, of
Nasty
course.
people work in slaughterhouses. But she said no, she wouldn't say it's a joy to go to, but it's a place where the animals are appreciated and honored. And as long as humanity desires to eat meat, there will be slaughterhouses. So the warrior does something energetically to
Yes.
try and make it a little bit better. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think of sustenance hunters like the Inuit in the North Alaska,
Mm.
north of Fairbanks, who there's nothing grows there. There's not even soil. I mean,
No.
it's just ice. And so their diet is strictly sea creatures, and they
Mm.
pull seals and whales out of the water, and they ritually, when they pull a seal out, they all gather around and they open it up and they take out the liver and they cut it up on the ice and they all share in the
Mm.
liver. And it is exactly what Christians experience at the Eucharist
Mm.
table. It is understood that the animal is a willing sacrificial victim
Mm.
who the Great Mother sends in order for so that the people may live. And
Yes.
there's a deep sense of gratitude, not to a transcendent God, but to the creature. So there's all this dignity and reverence around the act that these people don't have a vegan or vegetarian option
No,
or a Whole Foods nearby
no.
or anything else. And so now you and I both know scads of people on all points of the vegan, vegetarian,
Mm.
omnivore spectrum. And it is not just the action, but as you just pointed out with the abattoir story,
Mm.
it's the energy, it's the intentionality, it's the mindfulness
Yeah.
with which we participate in the fact that all forms arise and fade. And this business that biology puts us in of this constant
Mm.
killing and eating of other life
Yeah.
is something to be approached reverently.
It is, and we are so entitled, Peter. We just go to the supermarket and get a slab of meat. Most
Anything.
people don't even think about where it comes from. And the idea of saying grace before a meal, oh no, I don't want to thank God, God's boring, all that kind of, well, thank the animal, thank the plants, thank the land.
Yeah.
And
And
I
all
do
the
a lot of
workers.
foraging nowadays. I've trained in a certain amount of foraging and a lot of sacred
Beautiful.
geomancy, working with the land.
Yeah.
And you give back. I always have a pouch of oatmeal with me. This morning I picked wild garlic to make wild garlic pesto, and you take some oatmeal. And every Friday night we crack open a bottle of wine at the weekend. Oh my goodness, we are, I don't know. But the first,
Sodom and Gomorrah over there.
I know it's terrible, isn't it? But the first offering of the wine goes out to our garden. We've got a little standing stone there, and I bless and thank the spirit of the place
Yeah.
for the weather, for the land, for what I grow, for everything that keeps us safe in this land. So there is some
Beautiful.
honoring done there. And when we lose this, we just lose this kind of connection to the life force itself.
Yeah.
One of my friends on Facebook, he's a dear guy, but he's very lonely. He's autistic, and his mother died quite recently. And he
Mm.
posted up a meme saying, all I want to do is eat pizza and binge watch horror movies. And I was sort of thinking, oh, my poor love.
Yeah.
And I get that. I mean, that we,
That sounds
we,
like a
we
pretty
try
good
not to
day, but
binge watch, and you make fabulous pizzas. We know that. But
no, I get it. I get it.
it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
this, we're living in these cities now and these towns that are being so disconnected from this great mother, our planet. And
Right.
the other thing I do, I put this up on Substack, and again, sorry if it's virtue signaling, I will not go out of the house without asking for full blessings for this planet. May our Holy Mother, the Earth, be blessed to the full extent she may receive the benediction of the All Holy One, all her peoples of earth, air, fire, and water. And I also say, wherever I drive, may this pathway that I drive today be safe for all beings.
Yeah. That's
May
not,
all beings be
that's
safe from
beautiful.
all humans. And I don't see roadkill anymore, Peter.
Oh my goodness.
Well, not
So
a
that,
roadkill from the day, not
yeah,
from that day.
right.
So
So
why
that
don't we
sense
do
of
this?
that sense of reverence. I love how you describe your family ritual when you open that bottle of wine. The first bit goes to an offering.
Mm.
And when you make ritual offerings like that, it's not for me, the focus isn't the on the offering itself, on the material being
Mm.
shared. When the way we act in the outer world realigns and transforms the way we are aware in the inner world.
Yes.
And so the inner world is reoriented by actions in the outer world, and it's reoriented by speech and consciousness and what we give our attention to. And so all these blessings, these ideas you've been sharing with us are
Mm.
really rich. And it's the opposite of virtue signaling because you're not here to manipulate anyone or self-aggrandize yourself, but you are simply factually stating um, some really useful advice ultimately about maybe there's a different way to think our way through our day
Mm,
and the obvious suffering in the world. Here in the U.S.,
mm,
we're learning more and more about the war in Iran, and our jaws are all hanging down, most of us, in
mm,
horror and shock and all the things done in our name. And maybe most folks know the name Pete Hegseth. He is
mm,
our Secretary of Defense, head of the Defense Department, head of all branches of the military. And of course, he changed the name to its original 1950s name,
mm,
the not the Defense Department, but the Department of War, and calls himself the Secretary of War. And he instituted a monthly Christian service
mm,
inside the Pentagon. Here comes theocracy, right? And Christian nationalism and all the sort of thing you and I write and talk quite a bit about. But I'm just thinking about this today that they published some of the text of some of the prayer that he gave at the last Christian meeting in the Pentagon, and he's praying for the God to help us break the teeth of our enemy and to pray for,
mm.
relentless violence.
Yeah, no
And he
quarter,
has
he
such,
said, didn't he? No quarter.
sorry?
No
Yeah,
quarter, he said.
no quarter. So he has such a kind of a shocking enthusiasm for
Yeah.
dismemberment and the bombing of schools. And he gets really excited about
Yeah.
that. And
He was
and
not
I think
circumcised at the age of 13.
it's just so my thought went to this lovely passage in the Tao Te Ching, which is,
Yeah,
the great
yeah,
book of Chinese wisdom from
yeah.
25 centuries ago. And it's chapter 31, and it's not very long. I thought I'd just read
Oh,
it
please
because
do.
it's such a different way of framing the violence that is sometimes necessary,
Mm,
as we've been discussing. We
yeah.
were talking before the broadcast about I have the honor as a community college professor here in a Navy town in San
Mm,
Diego of having a lot of veterans
mm,
in my classes. And when I meet combat veterans, this one young man who spent quite a few years in Afghanistan, and then he's 31, he's not a kid anymore.
mm.
And what he's been doing the last 5 years is he got hired by a security company and identifies himself as a mercenary. And he spent the last few years in Ukraine
Yeah,
as a contractor, training the Ukrainians how to use all these weapons they were getting from the US
yeah,
to defend themselves against Russia. And I listen to these stories. I've never served, I've never owned a gun. I listen to these stories with just great. I feel honored to be brought into that world, as impossible as it is for me to
yeah,
understand. And I tell you what, the warriors I've known, battlefield warriors I've known, never talk or think like Pete Hegseth. They have a kind of sobriety
yeah,
and a sadness about
mm,
the necessity of war. But
yeah.
for the people who actually execute war, it's not fun.
No,
It's hell. And so this
yeah,
passage leaped to my mind. Listen to how Lao Tzu
mm,
frames this. Weapons are the tools of violence. All decent men detest them. Weapons are the tools of fear. A decent man will avoid them except in the direst necessity, and if compelled, will use them only with the utmost restraint. Peace is his highest value. If the peace has been shattered, how can he be content? His enemies are not demons, but human beings like himself. He doesn't wish them personal harm, nor does he rejoice in victory. How could he rejoice in victory and delight in the slaughter of men? He enters a battle gravely, with sorrow, and with great compassion, as if he were attending a funeral. So it's chapter 31 from the Tao Te Ching. It's
yeah.
beautiful.
My father was a squadron leader in Bomber Command during the Second World War, and his flight was one of the flights that bombed Hamburg.
Oh my goodness.
He was 21. About 10 years ago, my husband and I, sorry, we had a couple round for dinner, German couple,
Yeah,
who we got to know in the community where we were living. And they came round for dinner, and both their grandparents were killed in Hamburg in the bombing.
right,
And we're
right.
sitting there over the dinner table. We don't know them very well. And I had to say, I have to apologize
Oh, beautiful.
because
I,
my own
I,
father may have been part of the murder of your grandparents. And we sat, the other spiritual people, we all sat and held hands and were just silent in the connection and the forgiveness between those two.
You know, I literally wouldn't be here with you right now if it were not for the American and Canadian and British men who died on Normandy and Omaha Beach and the D-Day.
Mm,
Because my father was a prisoner in Germany, a forced labor prisoner, and my grandfather, his father, was in Buchenwald.
mm,
Um, Now, my father might never have come back from that
mm.
and married my mom and come to America and had me and all that stuff if he had died in Germany. And those that D-Day liberation led eventually to the fall of Germany. And I think about every time I watch the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, I think about the sacrifice that made it possible for me to be here in this lovely world, talking to you and doing all the beautiful, miraculous things that I've been graced with the
Mm.
opportunity to do my whole life. It is bought with blood. And
Yeah,
I want to live in a peaceful world. I want to live in a world without war.
yeah,
But for y'all in the UK, when the Germans were assaulting England and bombing London and clearly trying to end the British Empire,
no,
and
well, the empire was about to go anyway, quite
yeah,
rightly,
right.
but I
But
know
I mean,
just what
just
you mean. Yeah,
this beautiful place, England would become a German outpost,
yeah.
and you know what? I was reading a bit the other day about Normandy, about all those endless tombstones there of all
Mm.
the Americans and Canadians and Brits who died. You know that the German headstones outnumber
Yeah,
the Allied headstones.
yeah,
And so it's that recognition of as the Tao Te Ching passage goes, the enemies are not demons, but human beings like himself.
yes,
That okay, in war there's a job to do, and it's basically just survive
yeah,
and push back the people who are trying to kill us. And but after the war, moments like around your dinner table, this is the rest of us now trying to pick up the pieces and return to that universal consciousness of unity
yeah,
that, to go back to the top of our broadcast today, that the Hafiz image of the warrior embodies.
yeah. And I'll close, if I may, with a poem by Hafiz. Hafiz.
Yes, please.
It's called I have come into the world to see this. I've come into the world to see this. The sword drop from men's hands, even at the height of their arc of anger. Because we finally realized there is just one flesh to wound, and it is his, the Christ's, our beloved's. I've come into the world to see this, all creatures holding hands as we pass through this miraculous existence we share on the way to an even greater being of soul, a being not just of ecstatic light, but forever entwined and at play with him. I've come into the world to hear this, every song that earth has sung since it was conceived in the divine's womb, and began spinning from their wish, every song by wing and fin and hoof, every song by hill and tree and woman and child, every song of stream and rock, every song of tool and lyre and flute, every song of gold and emerald and fire, every song the heart would cry with magnificent dignity to know itself as God. For all other knowledge will leave us again in want and aching. Only imbibing the glorious sun will complete us. I've come into the world to experience this. Women and men so true to love they would rather die before speaking an unkind word. Women and men so true to their lives that their lives are his covenant, the promise of hope. I've come into the world to see this. The sword drop from men's hands, even at the height of their arc of rage, because we have finally realized there is just one flesh we can wound, and it is our own.
Poets.
Poets. Thank you, Peter. We'll talk
Thank
again
you.
soon.